Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we're taking a look at Go Collect's hottest comics for the week of July 15th. Now, for those who don't know, Go Collect puts out a bi-weekly article that analyzes the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales and movement in the market. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the 5 books that are moving the most and see what's trending. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I would appreciate it. But let's get into this video here today. And of course, I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to do your own reading. This article is written by Matt Tuck, and we got a really interesting list this week, heavy on the Spider-Man. And I feel like a lot of these books are finding their floor levels, which is why we're seeing so many sales of them. And that I think is true for this book right here, coming in the number 5 slot. We got Amazing Spider-Man number 362, up 31 spots, now sitting in the 69th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the book written by David Michelinie that would come out in 1992 and would feature the second appearance of the character known as Carnage, and incidentally would actually be the first meeting of Venom and Carnage, and lastly would be the first time you see all these 3 characters in a comic book together and also on a cover together. And this, of course, is one of those books that got really hot coming off the heels of Venom number 2. Of course, I'm sure you guys are well aware that we had Woody Harrelson playing the character of Carnage. That got ASM 361 really moving in the market. Everybody was hyping up that book. That is one of the instances of a book that really shot up in the 2021 boom and has had a massive correction ever since then. This book has felt a similar path in terms of its trajectory. Obviously, with the rise of 361, this book also saw a rise, but as things do, after the movie, after the, pop culture event, this book has had a big correction. And this book is really starting to find its new floor value for itself. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why this book is moving so much in the market, due to the fact that, the prices are just so good for those who actually want to collect it. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look here. There's actually a few 10s on the census, and there's actually a few 9.9s, but let's focus on the 9.8s. Fair market value has them at $120. Census count is 3,753. 1 year moving, however, was 174, and you can see right here, 30-day moving 117. So definitely a lot lower than its previous peak high, and that's really the reason why I think this book is moving so much in the market, is it just feels like the prices are too good. If you're somebody who missed out on this book in 2021, now you're thinking that, hey, now might be a really good time to buy. I mean, it's basically kind of right in line to where it was in 2020, so not too bad of a price overall. $100, 9.8, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. And of course, 1992 book, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can find them being sold around that $20 or $25 range or so. All right, let's move on now to the 4th hottest comic of the week. And the 4th hottest comic of the week is another interesting Spider-Man book. This one right here is Spider-Man number 1 Gold Edition, up 33 spots, now sitting in the 58th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the cover C, I believe that it is, the gold cover of Spider-Man number 1, a book that came out in 1992, written by Todd McFarlane. Now, I'm sure you remember this classic cover that came out of the 90s. Todd McFarlane was such a successful artist at the time that he was actually given his own Spider-Man run, and he produced a series of covers that would be sort of this future iconic pose right here, one that would be homaged many, many times by other characters in other comic books. And you'd have this one right here, you'd have the green cover, you'd have the silver cover, I think that there was a regular cover as well, and then you had issue number 13, which would be the same pose, except it would be Spider-Man wearing the black suit. And this is definitely one of those sets of covers that collectors like to collect. Now, why specifically the gold one is on the list this week, not really too sure, other than the fact that it's still just a cover that people would like to own. I mean, there's a lot of copies out there, so it has a high potential to move a lot of volume in the market at any given time. And due to the fact that the prices have corrected for this one quite a bit, so if you're somebody who wanted this book last year, now is probably a really good time to pick it up. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look here. There's some 9.9s on the census, 20 to be exact, but let's focus on the 9.8s. 2,098 on the census. Fair market value has it at 170. 30-day moving 184, but you can see compared to the 1 year, it was actually 213. So like I already mentioned, the prices have been cooling off for this book as well. It saw a huge spike up here in 2021, and we're finding the floor value. I mean, it feels like, if I look at the graph and just sort of step back, I get the sense that there might still be room for this book to correct even more. But if I'm looking at a couple of the yearly lows where I see 89, 89, I mean, if you're somebody who wants this book and you can find it for under $100, I feel like that's a really good price, no matter what, kind of economic situation we're in, no matter what it corrects to. 89 bucks, not a big gamble, and a great book to have in the collection. And of course, 1992 book, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when I go to eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, I can find them selling around that $20 and $25 range as well. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest comic of the week. And the third hottest comic of the week is one that has been a hot comic before and one that we've talked about a few times before. But this one right here is Darth Vader #3, up 37 spots, now sitting in the 32nd slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be a book that came out in 2015, written by Kieran Gillen, and would feature the first appearance of the character known as Dr. Aphra. Now, I would say of all the key Star Wars books that are out there, of all the characters that have been speculated on for showing up in the Disney Star Wars shows, Dr. Aphra has been among the tops of that list. And this is one of those books that has been, heavily speculated on with every single Star Wars Disney show that has come out over these last couple years or so. I mean, every time we get, The Mandalorian, or every time we get Book of Boba Fett, or even when we got the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, this book was definitely moving in the market. A lot of people were thinking that, Dr. Aphra is going to show up, Dr. Aphra is going to be in a post-credit scenes or whatever the case may be. And every single time we get that speculation, she just hasn't shown up yet. But that doesn't stop a lot of collectors from still feeling like she has a lot of potential to be a character in the future. And that has a lot of collectors kind of, holding on this book or looking for this book or speculating on this book. And that's one of the reasons why it moves so much in the market, because there's a lot of people at any given time that want to buy into it because they think it's going to be a big one in the future, or want to sell it because they want to capitalize on the speculation. But whatever the case, this is one that is back on the hot list right here due to the fact that I think, we've had that correction. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look here. 9.8 has 3,533 on the census. Fair market value, $325. 30-day moving is 330. 1 year is 424. So, you can already see this is a book that has had a big correction from its previous high. I think, it shot up here when we got the original Mandalorian show, had that big correction. Then it shot up again due to the fact that, people were thinking, hey, Book of Boba Fett, that's going to be where we see her. And now that we're on the other end of that, this one is going down. Who knows where this actually ends up settling off? I mean, we're kind of selling right around 2020 prices. I still think there's probably room for this one to correct even more. But, if you're somebody who always wanted this book as a collector, now is as good a time as any to pick this one up. And then, of course, 2015 book, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when I go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, I typically see them being sold around that $120 to $150 range or so. All right, let's move on now to the second hottest comic of the week. And the second hottest comic of the week is one that is always fun to talk about, a staple for everybody's comic book collection. This one right here is Amazing Spider-Man number 252, newsstand edition, up 48 spots, now sitting in the 39 slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the book that came out in 1984, written by Roger Stern and Tom DeFalco, that would feature the first appearance of the black symbiote suit, otherwise known as the black costume for Spider-Man. Now, what can you say about this book other than the fact that it is one of the great Copper Age books to come out in the Copper Age? I mean, of course, it's got that amazing cover, the cover homage of Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance of the black suit, which would eventually be the symbiote that would find his way to Eddie Brock and create the character of Venom. This would be an important storyline for Secret Wars. So there's a lot of touch points, a lot of tie-ins for this book being important, not only just to the comic book continuity, but potentially to the MCU or the Sonyverse sometime in the future. Of course, at the end of Spider-Man number 3, we got that tease that the symbiote suit was left in our world, or at least in Tom Holland's world. So, it sort of implies that eventually when we get the next series of Spider-Man films, we might be doing a black suit storyline with the Tom Holland Spider-Man. That would definitely make a lot of sense. That's something we actually haven't seen on screen yet. So, when we actually get that, this book right here, Amazing Spider-Man 252, and some of the other ones as well, Secret Wars number 8 and things like that, are definitely going to be hot books in the market. Now, it's interesting with this one to talk about the newsstand edition. Now, of course, I've said on this channel where I don't think, in a year of 1984, newsstands should matter as much, but, that doesn't mean that I'm right. I mean, certainly the comic book market has spoken for this book, and this is one of those instances where, surprisingly, the newsstand edition for this particular book has actually been able to maintain its floor value even over the course of this 2021 boom. And that's in contrast to the direct edition that has had a pretty decent correction from its previous highs in 2021. So I do think that that is a testament to the newsstand copies. I do think that collectors value the newsstands a lot more, and I do feel that it is true for certain books that there is a lot less on the census for those particular copies, and this one, ASM 252, does seem to be the case for that. So if we dig into the numbers here, we take a look at the 9.8s. Census only has 41 newsstand copies on the census, and that's really the key factor as to why this book has been able to maintain a floor value. There's just a lot of people who want to hold onto their book and not a lot of sellers for this thing. Fair market value has it at the $2,700 level. 1 year moving was $2,300, 90-day moving is $2,700, and we haven't had a sale in the last 30 days. But you can see this book that shot up, in 2021 has really been able to kind of maintain its general floor value across this last, year and a half or so. So that is a testament to this book, and being that there's only 41 copies out there, it does make a lot of sense that it can maintain the floor value. And then of course, 1984 book, not too many slabbed low-grade copies of this thing, but when I go into eBay looking for newsstand editions, depending on the deal, depending on the grade, you can still find them selling around that $100 to $200 level or so. All right, let's move on now to the hottest comic of the week, and the hottest comic of the week is a very cool one to talk about. This one right here, of course, has a show going on right now on Amazon, or I guess we're at the end of the season, but it's currently running on Amazon. And what book am I talking about? Well, the number one book this week is The Boys #1, up 56 spots, now sitting in the 27th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the first issue of The Boys, written by Garth Ennis, a book that came out in 2006. Now, like I already mentioned, The Boys has a current show right now going on Amazon, and it is one of the most talked about, most successful, I would say streaming shows that there is out there in, the entertainment space right now. I really do think that this particular season of The Boys has catapulted this show into sort of a new stratosphere of fandom. I mean, I feel like The Boys is kind of right up there with, shows like Stranger Things, and, it's kind of scratching or knocking on the door of that, a Game of Thrones hype level. So I do think that this book has been a really exciting book to own out there in the market, even more so than that of, the previous seasons. And it definitely seems like, now that The Boys is hitting its stride, it does sort of beg the question, like, where can this book go from here? And I think that's really one of the reasons why a lot of collectors are buying into this book, even though we're kind of selling at peak prices right now. A lot of people think that, this show is going to go on for at least a few more seasons or so, and that could mean higher highs for this book in the future. Now, with that being said, outside of those future seasons, what is going to be the future outlook for a book like this? Once we're on the other end of the show, say, 5-10 years from now, is this still going to be a desired key in the market? I think about books like The Walking Dead #1, certainly have a floor value and still like a desired key to own for comic book collectors, but still are not going to be able to reach their peak highs during the course and during the height of The Walking Dead show. And I feel like a similar situation is going to happen with this one right here, but still a great book to own if you are a fan of The Boys. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look here at some of those values. 9.8s have 720 on the census. Fair market value suggested to be $400. 30-day moving is $450 basically. 1 year moving is $421. So definitely a book that is, basically selling at its current peak highs. I mean, I think there have been some record sales prior to this one right here, but this is actually a book I talked about in a video I did last week where I mentioned, first when it got optioned, it had a spike, then it had a big correction, then it went up during season 1, then it had a correction, then it went up in season 2, then it had a correction, and now kind of in season 3, we're basically right around that, peak price range. It'll be interesting to think about if this book can go much higher than this. When I compare it to, sort of the journey that a book like The Walking Dead has had, Walking Dead definitely peaked in like season number 3 or 4 or 5. You can see that, this book right here was, peaking in the show. Then it had a big correction in 2020, kind of shot up again due to 2021 speculation prices, and it's had a big correction. But, if we erase the 2021 prices, basically this is a book that peaked in the middle of the show rather than the end of the show. So I do wonder with a book like The Boys, where it'll go from here. But hey, $450 for a 9.8, not terrible if you are a massive fan of The Boys. But, if you want to go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can find them being sold around that $100 to $150 level, depending on the deal and depending on the grade you can find for yourself. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next one.